A quick favor before we start, if you love the Blueprint podcast, please rate and review us wherever you listen. It makes a huge difference. Thanks and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Blueprint podcast, where we throw out the old blueprints so you can become who you were always meant to be. I'm your host, Jason Smith, and if you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button and share this podcast with your friends on social media and tag me in it at JBirdFit. Today, I have a very special guest for you, Adam May. Adam is a licensed clinician, consultant, and author who shares his extraordinary journey of resilience, self-discovery, and purpose, from overcoming a rare cancer and amputation to battling addiction and survivor's guilt. Adam's story is a powerful testament to the human spirit's capacity for healing and growth. Adam May, welcome to the Blueprint Podcast. Yeah, it's really great to have you, man. It's so interesting how we end up connecting with people. And this is one of those things I want to encourage everybody when you find something for free. So Amberly Lago had something for free, and Amberly's been on the podcast. I got her book behind me, Joy Through the Journey. But she offered something for free about book writing and going through that process. And within that, this is how I met Adam, because I was in the comment section, and of course Amberly's delivering with fire and giving us some really great information, and I had my own comments to go with, and I saw Adam come on and have some conversation as well, and I was just like, you know what, we should have this guy on. So I encourage you guys, you never know who you're going to meet and when you're going to meet them and what type of conversations that you're going to end up having. I just finished your YouTube video that was Adam Got a Second Chance at Life, and I was hoping that you could define that a little bit further for us. What was that second chance?
The reason why I immediately struggled was chronologically, you would think it would be at 19, because that's when I was discharged from a pediatric children's hospital after being diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma. But I didn't just miraculously walk out into adult life, gung-ho, ready to go. I was diagnosed in 2005. I left pediatric primary care in 2009. And if you're at all familiar with what was going on in 2008 in America, it wasn't a great time to be excited about adulthood.
It was neat.
And so my 20s were riddled with survivor's guilt and success. And what I was doing throughout that period was I didn't know what to do after I beat cancer. How do you one up that? My Make-A-Wish trip, because I was pediatric, my Make-A-Wish trip, I got to go to Australia. So at 19 years old, I had beaten cancer and already traveled to Australia. There is nothing more in my life that I will accomplish that will ever surmount to that. That's what I was telling myself as I was being told by the pediatric hospital, you beat cancer, go prosper, go live life. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. And so I started doing what I assumed would make my life better. I continued my education. I continued a relationship. I bought a house. I got married. I was doing all of the pieces. At no point in time was I getting better. I still had the struggle of the survivor's guilt. I'd now completed my education. So instead of dedicating all of my time and energy into education, I converted it to alcohol. So now I had a master's and a hell of a drinking problem. I didn't think it was a problem because I could skillfully drink a fifth a day and then still manage and operate my job, helping and providing for others. I thrived off of the template, do as I say, not as I do. And a lot of it vicariously helped me, which was nice. But the only reason why I survived or stayed around in my 20s was because I was obligated to the caseload that I had created of people in need. I'm struggling often more times than the ones that are sitting across from the table from me. So that's why I have a hard time answering that, given a second chance at life. Honestly, 33 is when I finally clicked it together. And it took me 13 years to piece together everything that I had now experienced, witnessed, learned, and evolved from. And that's where the most pivotal point of change occurred in my life. Instead of just doing the things that I was good at or skillful at, I was now living more purposefully, more intentionally. I tell people I got sober at 27. I didn't get well until I was 33. Alcohol was never my problem. I didn't know how to manage my mental health. I didn't know how to manage my survivor's guilt. I've got a tattoo that goes all the way up into my shoulder, and I've got some Valkyries on my bicep here. And if you're at all familiar with what Valkyries were in Greek literature, they were the warriors. They rode on horseback, winged horses, and they rode on horses. And so if you were a valiant warrior that died in the field of battle, a Valkyrie would come down and they would pull your soul and they would place you in Valhalla. And then Odin would come for the great war and he would call all of his strongest out of Valhalla and say, "This is it. Ragnarok is upon us. We must fight." And so what the Valkyries represented were the people that lost their battles while I still survived. My struggles with suicidality throughout my 20s were largely based in I watched people die that will achieve more than I ever could. Why am I left here? I've got kids. When I was diagnosed, 2 days after I was diagnosed, a girl in our community, she's 6 years old. She was the daughter of a football coach at the high school. Died of I thought my cancer was rare. My cancer has 250 cases a year. Hers has one every 3. So the rarity of her disease, she ended up dying of a splinter infection. She got a splinter in her finger, and because of her immune system being so suppressed, she died. But the hardest thing about it, and this is why the community backed this family and this girl so much, this girl was fine with death. She was okay. She was excited to meet Jesus. That's what she would tell people. She had no fear of death. She knew that she was sick and she knew she wasn't going to survive, but it didn't hurt her on anything. Everyone else around her was so sad, so broken, and everything else. And then I get my diagnosis, and I almost feel like I have to carry on that kind of torch bearing because I'm now the new face of the cancer diagnosis in our community. And now I didn't feel like I could carry that kind of, this little 6-year-old girl was just the template of what to be as a sick kid, happiest, healthiest, except for her physical body. And I'm 17 years old, struggling with mental health since about 12, 13 years old, contemplating suicide for those 4 years. And then all of a sudden I'm gifted with the opportunity to die by cancer. I thought that was the best thing ever because I wanted to die. I was going to kill myself. And then all of a sudden you're telling me I don't have to do it now and I'm just going to die naturally. Yes, it'll impact people, but it won't be as bad as me putting a bullet in my brain. It's just, I just died of cancer. I died fighting valiantly. That looks a lot better than he succumbed to his disease of depression. That one doesn't get, oh, you gave up because you had depression. That's how we frame that one. But no, he died valiantly fighting. I can ride out on a shield on this one, but God forbid I get too exhausted and I can't do it anymore. Now I look weak and whatever else. So the desire of death has always been present. The intention of death has been so far. There's been a couple episodes where it wasn't a deliberate suicide attempt, but if you look back at it, why else did I hit a tree off the road this far? I understand I was drunk, but I wasn't that drunk. I was drunk, but that tree took I needed to deliberately move my vehicle to hit that tree.
What do you think were some of the contributing factors to the way that you felt at such a young age?
It goes back to, I describe myself as an eclectic nomad. I have the ability to interact with anyone, which is a beautiful thing. There's a beautiful children's book from when I remember this page for page growing up, where this chameleon would go around and he'd introduce himself to each of these new animal friends, and he would change to the color of the animal so that the animal would feel more comfortable in expressing themselves and talking about themselves. And then at the very kind of middle, 3 parts of the way through the book, somebody asked the chameleon, "What color are you?" And the chameleon's, I don't know. I'm not positive about that. And so I've struggled tremendously with personal identity in the sense of I've never been like I walk into a high school lunchroom and I could sit at every click and have a conversation. I could talk to the Pokemon kids. I could talk to the theater kids. I could talk to the sports kids. I could talk to the skateboard kids. I could talk to anybody and everybody, which is a very beautiful thing on paper, except for the chameleon never knows its actual color.
Yeah.
And so there were moments and periods in my time where I felt myself like I was always that person that was needed but not wanted. That was a reoccurring feeling that I always struggled with, or I always felt like I had. People needed me, but they didn't necessarily want me to be there because maybe I was too boisterous, too whatever. And I always had my core group of people, but I never was a part of something. So when my identity became cancer, I lost everything. 17 to 19 is supposed to be one of the most formative years for the formation of adult identity, not core identity. Core identity is going to be 11 to 13, where you really start figuring out like who you are and what I am a part of. And that's where, again, like I said, I started to struggle. Sixth grade going into seventh grade, everybody did their sport. Everybody had their special talent. Everybody had their friends because of association. I had my friends because of approximation, meaning I was still friends with the people that I lived closest to in my neighborhood, not because of mutual activities or because of this or that. So that's where a lot of it shifted or changed. And that's where a lot of the struggles of mental health. How come I'm not good enough? How come people don't want me? Why? How come a lot of these damning whys
Yeah.
and not these constructive hows? A lot of my professional consulting work that I do for clinical and strategic work is not answering the why, but answering the how. I work a lot with first responders and especially more so with firefighters, not so with police, but that's going to begin changing. But with my
I
firefighter
was going to
guys,
say, come on now.
I'm getting there. I got to go over there and talk to them. I just haven't gone over
Happy to collaborate with you on that one.
or low to. But the biggest thing with my firefighters is if you ask a firefighter how a fire started versus why a fire started, that is a completely different question.
Hey, Blueprint listeners, if today's conversation resonated with you and you're ready to truly unlock your own personal transformation, I invite you to explore the Self-Discovery Blueprint. This is where we dive deep into the strategies and insights you need to understand who you are, clarify your purpose, and build the life you're truly meant for. It's the comprehensive guide to your next level growth. You can find out more by visiting my Stand store, link in bio, or in the show notes.
And I spent the majority of my 20s asking, why did I survive? Why did I do this? Why did this person die? Why did I? Because by the time I started getting up into 24, 25, and then people started dying around me, and it didn't have anything to do with a disease or something like that. I mean, this tattoo is the first friend I lost in a car wreck. That threw me. You want to start navigating to how I got sober. I got sober because this friend never saw me sober. Because this friend sent me an email that says, Adam, I love you. And I just want you to know. And that ate at me for a very long time because I was sitting at a Kansas City Royals game. And then all of a sudden I get a phone call that says she didn't make it to the lake. What do you mean? Hold on. What do you mean? Because I'm at a Royals game and my wife's with me and she's supposed to be leaving for the lake tomorrow morning to meet all of you guys for her bachelorette party. So what do you mean she didn't make it to, what do you, like, they're not going to the lake? Getting into that irrational, illogical, like what you're saying to me doesn't compute with my brain. I'm at a Royals game. I don't want to have this conversation. Tell me when she gets there, that kind of thing. Not, where is the lifeless body of my friend that you are saying right now? Because she died in Hannibal, Missouri, and we live in Kansas City, and you were trying to go to Lake of the Ozarks. That's what people are trying to figure out. So it's like situations like that where I'm a struggling alcoholic. Yeah, sure, I got a master's in clinical psychology, and sure, I've got a full-time degree, and sure, I'm married and whatever else. But if you really look at what I'm doing in my life, it's not worthy and it's not valuable. That's what my 20s were. And it finally got to a point, what's called the major depressive inventory, I was completing in one session with a client sitting on the couch opposite of me, a person paying there, giving money for my professional services. And I'm answering the major depressive inventory while they're answering the MDI, and my scores are worse. That's when I knew I needed to step away because I was doing a disservice to others at that point. What are you going to do if you're coming to a provider for substance and mental health and suicidality, and all of a sudden your provider goes off on a bender and kills himself? Now that bender part's never been burning in the back of the brain, but the end it all, that won't ever go away. And I'm not going to ever deny that. And I tell people that all the time with the people that I work with, leave it as an option. Leave it as an option, but you need to come up with 9 other options that make more sense. You could take your life and you could leave at this moment here today. But what does that, not just for you, but you've got to educate and help people understand what impact does it have beyond that? This fixes this issue, but now you're going to create all these other contagions. And getting into not just the importance of family, and you're not trying to burden a person by saying, if you kill yourself, it's going to screw up your kids and your wife and your husband and your family and everybody else. It's not that conversation. It's, listen, you are overwhelmed and burdened right now by everything that is surmounted onto you, and you are handling it and prepared to handle it. These people are not. You need them to be able to help you. And that's where you've got to have that collaborative cohesion. And that's what I appreciate most by starting my professional career in adolescence, is because you're almost forced to have family therapy. And I used to do that where I'd see a kid 3 times a week and I'd see the whole family once a month. And when you get the whole family involved, when you get everybody involved and help them kind of understand the family dynamic perspective of how this person's well-being is impacting or not impacting those around them, it creates more unity in the family front. And that's not just family by blood, it's family by friend, family by blood, and anybody else.
It's so interesting that we go back to this place of overwhelm and burden. I think so many people at a very early age, and I was one of those people, very much struggled emotionally with the who am I, where am I going, what am I doing, why am I here? These circumstances are tough. I don't understand what's going on. Why am I disliked? Why is this happening? Where is the coaching, the mentorship, and the value of the situation? And as you go into your later teenage years, it almost becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy where you are going to start drinking because you find that you can move into these different substances to allow yourself to finally find some sort of peace or regulation, even if it's just for a moment. It's a coping mechanism and it works for the moment, except it doesn't. And we both know that. We know the challenges that come from that and what people are experiencing. And you so eloquently pieced all of this together with the experiences that you've had. What I find even more interesting is, as a clinician, you're sitting across from someone who is going through some very difficult things. And I don't think this is an uncommon story with the clinicians that are out there. And I've had a lot of clinicians on the show and they listen to the show. Speaking to them right now, how would you help guide them through some of the experiences that they're having right now as they sit across from someone that they have gone through almost the exact same thing with, and they might not know how to navigate that for themselves?
You've got to be able to find that authenticity of yourself to ensure that you are, in fact, qualified to be able to help another person in that need. You cannot operate the do as I say, not as I do. And that's where I had to take diligence and actually separate myself from direct clinical work, was because I needed to be selfish for once. Everything that I was willing to provide for another person, I was unwilling to provide for myself. Accountability, stability, and safety. and my own negligence and lack of accountability, the reasons why I've converted my professional work into consulting is because I'm more the checks and balances. I want you to be able to go out into the world and then come back to me and then tell me how it did or did not work. Isn't that cognitive behavioral therapy? Yeah, except for I don't have to come after you for a diagnosis. I don't have to submit to insurance. If you have, I've got two folks right now that struggle on a clinical level. And we have these conversations where it's, listen, the work we're doing now versus the work we're teetering into, that's the difference. And this is where I need you to step up and be accountable. You've got to circle back with your psychiatrist right now. You've got to circle back with this. And I'm here to assist you in those moments. It's not a lot of the trouble that I dealt with was that I felt as if I couldn't let people know I was struggling, whether I was or was not, because it would look bad. So the skinny chef theory, never trust a skinny chef. I would never, the more non-kosher ones, never trust a fat trainer. You got to practice what you preach. And if you don't, then you're preaching with falsehood and you're not actually doing the right by the book. And I think that's a lot of what we struggle with as individuals is that, especially as a first responder, I deal with a lot of, like I said, the hero complex that first responders deal with. I live across the street from the grocery store and I see the firefighters. For whatever reason, the firefighters take the fire truck to go to Aldi's to do the grocery shopping. So obviously it's going to draw in attention every time they pull up to do their grocery shopping. And sometimes I've seen them drop their stuff in the middle and they've got to run out and light the rig and run off. But again, sometimes you'll see them and these little kids will run up to them and they'll do all of that. And I ask these guys, like, does that impact you? Does that make you feel good? Or is that just a normal day? He goes, at this point, it's just a normal day. And so you have to ask him, does it impact you or does it affect you? Do you have to maintain that? Can you show weakness? He goes, no, you can't at that point. When it becomes a piece of your external, obviously we talk about men's mental health and how it presents differently than women's mental health. And I'm not saying this to make it sound bad, but women can show mental health. Men can't. We're allowed to, we're just not supposed to. No, don't get me wrong. It's welcomed and it's warranted and men are allowed to cry. Even Tupac said it. Even thugs cry. But we're still not supposed to. We're given two opportunities, the movie Rudy and then maybe Return of the King. But other than that, you're not supposed to cry. But when you actually understand the biological necessity of crying and realize that it's not associated to sadness, it's actually associated to internal feelings that we don't know how to externalize. So we end up teapotting, no different than a thing of water that's sitting on a hot stove. That's where it's so difficult for us. The majority of suicidal episodes that I have dealt with, as well as treated, are anxiety-based, not depression. Sure, people are exhausted, they're burnt out, and they're sad. But when they get overwhelmed and they want it to stop, I don't know how many times I've been on the phone with people that have been handfuls deep of pills. But the worst part about taking pills is it takes about 20 or 30 minutes for it to digest into your stomach. So all of a sudden that oh shit comes on whenever you take it all. And I've had people nodding off on the phone being, listen, we're not having conversations. I need you to tell me your location. I didn't mean to do this. Listen, we're not talking about that right now. We'll talk about that later. I need to know your location. I nearly lost a patient because she nodded off before she was able to give me her address. And thankfully, she started enough of an episode the night before with the police that they knew who I was calling about when I called. So when they did the safety assessment, they were able to get there in enough time to charcoal her safely and get her stabilized. But it was just it's those types of urgent feelings. I know those feelings. I've been there, not because I sat in the classroom, not because I took not a weekend intensive, but a continuing education about suicide and whatever is required of it for the license. I do still technically have a clinical license. I just don't operate under the tutelage or usage of it. I do clinical consulting. I don't do clinical diagnostics and intervention. The whole purpose of me writing my book, Fox and a Bear Chap, a book on how to ask for help, is what's interesting about it is my preface is written in first person about me. The rest of the book is in second person to you. But what's interesting is that it is actually to me from 10, 15 years ago. I wrote this book to myself as a resource of this is what you needed to get yourself to where you are today. This is collectively what I have done. When you look at the table of contents, understanding your trap, confronting anxiety and depression, overcoming avoidance, developing emotional maturity, shifting from blaming to taking responsibility, facing fear and identifying fallacies, trust versus mistrust, overcoming helpless, hopeless, and worthlessness, enhancing self-worth and addressing worthlessness, understanding Maslow's hierarchy and personal growth, and developing personality and identity. Like they cascade onto each other. They have to. It has to build in that way. For you to get to the peak of Maslow's hierarchy, which is supposed to be self-actualization, you got to have food, water, and shelter every day. Sometimes, I wouldn't say sometimes, I'd say 60 to 70% of adults will get into their 60s or 70s before they ever get personal identity, and let alone self-actualization. I've known adult grown people that didn't figure out their reason or purpose until they had grandkids.
Yeah.
And to go that long to not have an identity and to finally feel like your identity is now Mima and that's what you've always waited for. Yes, it took 63 years, but you finally got here.
So many people are just in that state of survival that they never get the time or the opportunity to really step back, zoom out, and self-reflect, be able to even understand who they are as an individual.
Right.
So it's just not uncommon. And we give the boomers a really hard time because so many of them just never hit that point. But I've had people inside the self-discovery blueprint that are 60, 70 years old, and they're going through this for the first time. And so for everybody who is mad at their boomer parents, give them a little bit of grace and just understand that they do have it within them to want to become who they're capable of becoming. They've been in survival for so long that they don't know how to come out of that. So from your perspective, how can somebody start to come out of that survival state so that they can move into self-actualization?
And that's the thing, because I love your reference to the boomers and the things about that, because one of the rhetorics that my generation and anyone else has been using is they're doing the best they can. They're doing with the most that they understand and know. That's accurate 20 years ago. Now it's your responsibility to educate yourself to current. There has been so much growth, especially within the clinical field of our understanding, that I understand what you're saying. By 30 years ago, you didn't have these resources, but now you do. So now it's our responsibility. When we look at the differentiating like EQ and IQ, the thing about the IQ is the IQ never changes. It just gets worse. Your EQ, you can mature at any point in time. I've struggled, and still to this day, I struggle with an EQ that'll throw me anywhere between ages 13 and 17 to where I'll have an emotional reaction that appears like I'm 13 to 17. If you look back at the history, that makes sense. I was emotionally stunted during that period of time. I've diligently over the last 20 years in rebuilt my emotional acuity. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Sorry, guys, we're going to have to, because we now know some new tricks about what we understand about what trauma and the trauma experience. What boomers don't understand and what the rest of the population doesn't understand. Post-traumatic stress disorder, that title came in 1984. So you're trying to tell me that post-traumatic stress disorder was invented in 1984? No, it wasn't. It was given a name, and still to this day, 40 years later, we're still trying to understand to what level does someone have a post-traumatic experience. Oh, you mean if you put a TV in front of me for 8.5 hours as I'm 14 years old and I watch people jump out of a building that's going to affect me for the next, I don't know, 15, 20 years? Maybe. We're not really sure. Previously, we thought you had to have a firsthand experience for you to have a post-traumatic experience, but apparently now you can watch 9/11 on TV and that'll stick with you for the rest of your life. Like Oklahoma City bombing tiptoed into that just a little bit as far as like national exposure to a tragedy, but not to the degree of 9/11 because 9/11 was active. OKC was post-event aftermath only. We didn't see the explosion. That's where the research, I think that was at 96 or something. That's where the research started. At what point does that impact the greater population if we expose them to these kinds of things? Is that is news, how much news stuff should we put on the news? Real life stuff. And then 2001 came along, and then the internet after that just made everything accessible and exposed to everybody. So if you want to see the worst sides of the world, you just go to this website. If you want to see the best sides of the world, you go to this website, but none of them leave you feeling good. Because the best side of the world is one that you can never obtain and you'll never have. And the dark side of the world is the one you don't want to know it exists. And that I had when Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade, I think they killed themselves about 3 weeks apart. Kate Spade's from Kansas City. And I was in Kansas City at that time. And then Anthony Bourdain is just a big enough name internationally that anybody knows him. And I remember counting, I had 3 patients come into my office within the next 10 days and said, if somebody like them with that amount of money can't make it, why am I trying? And I don't have answers for that. I've said to a lot of people, material things do not increase quality of life. You go back and read Siddhartha if you need to reevaluate that one. And I think understanding purpose and reason. I tell you, I got sober at 27, but I didn't get my life together until I was 33. I know I've done good work, but I want to do more meaningful work. And that's what my purpose and intention is now moving forward, is to not only, they say the highest form of learning is teaching. I survived for some reason. I tell people I've shaken hands with many faces of death, and death does not scare me. I'm more afraid of not living than I am of actually dying. And that's what I want to help people get out of, is being afraid of living. I tell people the reason people say, how are you so successful? And I say, 1, I'm not. And 2, I'm getting there. And 3, it's because I'm willing to fail more often than most people are willing to try. The other part about it, I've learned more from the homeless and from children than I have from millionaires and people that are set for life. Sorry, the ones that been through the struggles and been through the trenches, they often have more resources. And that's what I really love. And that's what I really value. And so I implore anybody to always initiate those kind of conversations, because you never know who you're actively sitting with at any given moment or any given time. You don't know the whole reason I got connected with Amber Lee was because there's a local artist here that I had been watching that I wanted to buy something from. And she does videography and photography, and she did a job for Amber Lee. And so it was just this weird, I just wanted a picture of, she drew foliage. I wanted a picture of a leaf. And now I'm in a conversation with you and that's how the world is supposed to work.
Right. Quick break here to recommend a friend's show that I truly enjoy called Rugged Counseling with Trey Tucker. If you're ready for direct, actionable strategies to master your mindset, strengthen your relationships, and truly build the life you're striving for, Trey is a licensed therapist who provides just that. No detours, just practical guidance. You can find Rugged Counseling with Trey Tucker wherever you get your podcasts.
And if we can get back into that, where it's, listen, I didn't write this for monetary value. I wrote this because I needed this 10, 15 years ago. The real reason I wrote this is because I'm exhausted by work, and I want you to be able to grab this and come back to me and have questions and say, hey, in chapter 3, you got this section here and I get it, but I don't like, I just do this and it just does that. And I say, no, not at all. It's repetition and practice and habit and change and creating more fulfilling outcomes for people so that I can't do a 9 to 5. I got a hard time being in one place at one time. After about 2 years, I get a little shifty. The consulting thing is beautiful for me because previously in my old work history, at the 3 to 5 year mark, I get like, I want to just bail.
I think that's just the mark of Gen X.
I
really do, because here I am.
And that's I think what it's come down to, and I use this example all the time. Why are you trying to shave the polar bear? I ask that to people and they'll look at me like, what? I said, why are you trying to shave a polar bear? I said, why are you trying to put an animal in an environment that it's not suited for? And then you're trying to adapt the animal so that the animal can survive in the environment. Why would you not just put the animal back in the cold? Why are you trying to shave a polar bear? I don't know anything else. These are the only people I know. These are the only things I know. And then that opens up the door to the conversation about learned helplessness. You only know this because you've become used to this. It's easier to survive because you now know that this won't kill me no matter what amount of pain it's creating for you. I deal with daily pain. My starting when I wake up every morning, I'm at a 7. For me, that's really good. Mind you, my 7 is your 13, but for me, that's really good. But it's gotten to a point where now I just ignore it because it's been present every day. I got a baloney prosthetic because I lost my leg due to the cancer. The original tumor was in the entirety of my heel bone. And I lost my leg, and it's considered a Cinderella fit in the prosthetic. And it's not comfortable. It is not comfortable to wear this prosthetic. But the absolute last thing I will ever allow is for anyone to see me wince in pain. Because the moment that I wince, that activates your sympathy, and that's the last thing I want. And then that burdens my trouble again. Because then that gets me looped back into my head of, I can't do this myself. I have to rely on other people. I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to blah, 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 blah. Same rhetoric I've had since I was 13. Not because of cancer. That's what people don't realize. Everyone thinks that my life started as a struggle at 17 because I was diagnosed with cancer. No, that was a blessing. I'm still alive because of that. Thank God when they prescribed me methadone at a children's hospital, it gave me a severe bullet migraine because that would have been the reason I would have killed myself. I would have absolutely OD'd on opiate by the time I was 21, 22, 23, because at 17, they're already giving me methadone. And at that point, the alcohol was never about actual alcohol addiction. Yes, you can become physically addicted to alcohol. Mine was not about physical addiction. It was the fact that I couldn't sleep. It was the fact that I hurt all the time. And it was the fact that I didn't want to deal with any of my emotions. My emotions being, why did I survive? I didn't sign up for this. That was my rhetoric for my 20s. I didn't sign up for this. Anytime anything went bad in my 20s, that was my immediate thought. I didn't sign up for this. The resentment I had from my mom through my 20s was, you took my leg and I could have just died and I wouldn't have to deal with this. I don't have $500 for my insurance deductible to get a new prosthetic. I don't have this amount. I'm going to lose my mobility. Every time there was something, it was just 1, 2, 3 more straws on the little camel's back. You want to talk about the biggest, depression is not sadness. That's what a lot of people get confused about. That is only one component of that diagnostic criteria, is tearfulness and sadness. The other has to do with a decrease of functioning and decrease of activity. You just can't operate. You just don't have the energy. One thing that I've always, regardless of my physical adversities, as long as my mental health is okay, it doesn't matter what my physical body is doing. And that's where I recognized I may not be able to recover my physical health in the way that I want to or need to. But as long as I keep my mental health at its highest capacity, I will be able to effectively provide for others as a do as I say and as I do.
What I love about this whole conversation is there's a bit of a theme here at the end of the day, and it's something that you've already done, and it is to allow other people to help you. And how difficult has that been for you to get to that point where you've been through all these trials and tribulations? Here you are now, here we are now having this conversation. And in order to be here, you had to allow people to help you. How did you deal with that?
I wrote a book about it because I didn't know how to otherwise. It took forever and a day for me to finally figure out I had a lot of trust issues for a long time, especially during my treatment. My treatment was 14 months long. Everybody was present every day for 3.5 months. And then after that, it was just family. And then after 8 months, it was family when they could get away from work. And so I became really independent and not in a good way. And that was really troublesome for myself throughout my 20s.
Did you feel like you were being abandoned in that process?
Not deliberately, but yes, absolutely. Just recognizing that people only care if I'm nearing death's door. That's what I walked away with. That exacerbated through my 20s with a teetering diagnosis of borderline. I never imposed threats to self or anything like that in the way that a full active borderline person would. But there was always that, man, life was easier when I was sick in bed. That always existed there. It took me isolating myself in Colorado for a full year for me to finally figure out how to articulate my words constructively enough to my parents. I will admit that it was assisted by psilocybin to be able to bypass some of the barriers that I had created internally over the last 30 years, but eventually was able to articulate and write an email to my mom that I say to this day I should have written 30 years ago, and was able to finally articulate without agitation how much I needed help. And it not come off as, excuse my language, but thank you for keeping me alive. You need to help me now. Because that's what all my 20s was I didn't want them to take my leg. I was 17 3/4 when they took my leg. Because if I was 18, I'd have 2 legs. I wouldn't be alive, but I'd have 2 legs. That's for damn sure. But my mom jumped in and took all of my autonomy. And so that's why I couldn't ask for help for the remainder of my 20s, was because 1, there's a combination of I don't deserve it. 2, I don't want it. And 3, what good am I going to do with it? Alcoholism is the slowest form of suicide. Substance abuse is the slowest form of suicide. I prayed every day I threw up black, that'd be the last time. I woke up frustrated when I woke up. It took years for me to finally figure out how to ask for help and not have this Thanos approach of, fine, I'll do it myself. That's why I'm really successful in business. Don't get me wrong. I know and understand jack of all trades is a master of none. Or I forget what the whole phrase is, but there's actually 3 parts to that phrase. Everyone only remembers the beginning. Yeah. But there's actually the third sentence of that is the one that's most important. A jack of all trade is I I can't remember. It's going to bug me now. But that was one of the things as far as the clinical work. Yes, I find tremendous value in the clinical work that I still do.
Are you ready for it?
Go ahead, please.
A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one.
Exactly. That part is the most important part of it. I would rather be skillful in a lot than an expert in in only one thing.
That goes back to Gen X again. We are everything to everyone all the time and have a lot of different capabilities because it's just how we grew up. I always liken it back to we started with Atari, right? And then you get Nintendo and then Sega and then PlayStation. Like there was this evolution throughout time, and with each time you're being changed, you're being renewed, you're being developed, you're being honed, you're being shaped to adapt to all of these different things throughout time. So now here we are at iPhone 38. And of course, we know how to adapt to this technology, but that also applies to all the different aspects of our life. We're just highly adaptable to really difficult situations.
But the problem with that, though, is yes, we are adaptable, but how often do we just fall back and regress into old habits and behaviors? Because yes, I'm better. Yes, I'm well. Yes, I'm over. But I'm not going to say there's not at least once a week that I'm just like, I can see where this could navigate me into some pretty odd headspaces. Maybe not dark. There's a small part of my brain that's just, what happens if you hit that achievement? Are you going to be done in life? If I get a TEDx by the end of 2025, am I done?
Going to, by the way, it's going to happen.
I'm literally this close. I've got.
I saw the post. It was like
Southlake. So a third person opened up my video application Monday. Getting really close. But again, as long as I continue to set like a new task or responsibility, this is why I actually want to do. I've got 5 technical jobs that I do. I run a stem cell clinic down in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I own a consulting firm. I still do clinical work. I've got folks on a caseload that I've been working with for 6-7 years. I've written the book, and then I've got a podcast that I need to be more diligent on. So I have all of my pieces in place. And now it's my responsibility to just put myself out there. I know how to do all the components. I'm just not good about the social and the network and whatever. I'm so used to helping 5 to 10 people a day and then closing up shop and being done that I've always dreamed and aspired. I'll go back to watching YouTube 10, 15 years ago and being agitated and saying, oh, I could do that. Well, this is so stupid. These people don't even have skills or whatever else. Now I'm watching YouTube and I'm taking notes. Now I'm watching Ryan Trahan go across the United States doing all these Airbnbs and donating $2.8 million to St. Jude Children's Hospital. And I'm just like, I'm sitting at home in Missouri with my dog. I could do something like that. I'm a disabled person that's not actually disabled. I want to start doing physical challenges and documenting them and then putting them out there into the world and then just saying, listen, I did this. So now you go do. I'm not anything exclusive or special. I'm just somebody that paid attention and caught on. I'm not unique. I said that in our meeting yesterday with Amber Lee and whatever else with our big group. And I said, I'm not unique, meaning I am unique. My experiences, my story, and everything about that is unique. But what I've become because of it is not. That's what my TEDx talk is going to be about, written together because of my experiences as an adolescent residential therapist, shortly 5 years after being a residential inpatient hospital, and recognizing, oh, wow, I got a lot of my own healing I need to do because I'm down here on this level with these kids. Like my EQ, and we're at a peer level for EQ right now, and we're growing together. This is beautiful. But it's helping me recognize, like, I got a lot of core internal stuff that I don't think I'm addressing. That was 20. I hadn't yet picked up alcohol because I was still in the thrall of my grad program. So my brain was still pretty good and not distracted or disorganized. I was still struggling with gabapentin for nerve pain, which can create the same cognitive impacts as alcohol. So everyone says, why didn't you write the book sooner? Why didn't you? I literally couldn't. I cognitively couldn't. I also wasn't skillful enough and I wasn't ready. Now I'm ready. Now I can actually hand this book out to people and say, this is where I've gotten how I've got here. I'm not soapboxing you to say, hey, be like me. I'm just saying, be like you and get yourself to your fullest potential. My podcast is called Defying Despair, a Journey into Wellness. My consulting tagline, I don't know, is defying despair to consulting. So finding your best self and then defying it. Your best self is only the assessment that you have in that moment. You don't, it's what you decide. This is my best self. It's not, you don't get like a mailer that says, hey, congratulations, you achieved your best self. Here's what you now do with it for the next 90 days. That'd be really cool. And maybe we could collaborate on that about how to build that. That'd be lucrative.
Yeah. I always tell people you're always in a state of becoming, but who you become is always up to you. You are one of those people, Adam, that has truly allowed their mess to be their message. And you've done it in a very brilliant way by allowing yourself to display all the different parts of you that I think many people would be afraid to show, and to put yourself out there online in the way that you are. It can be almost damaging to someone's reputation, and you're allowing that with no shame to put that out into the world. And it's that self-compassion that you have to be able to do that. That is the antidote to shame, as Anna Lee Howling likes to say. What an impressive journey you have been on. And you haven't just gotten a second chance at life, you have gotten multiple chances at life every time you decide to stay. And I think people forget that, because it is an ongoing journey, and it is arduous, and it is difficult, and it is hard to overcome. And every day you are going to be hit with that question. And so every time you make the choice to stay, you get another chance. So for someone who's listening that might be in their bear trap, whether it's illness, addiction, a silent struggle, what is the most crucial piece of hope and actionable action or advice you can offer them today?
Understand your purpose, understand your reason, and make it your why.
How do you find your purpose?
You have to internally ask yourself, what good do I bring and what more can I do? You have to be able to understand who you are as a person before you can ever understand the value that you bring to others. And really just introspectively understanding yourself, looking back. The reason why 33, I hone in on that, was because I was given 3 periods of 10-year intervals that I could retroactively look back on and recognize where the patterns began and how come I kept the patterns, whether they were good or bad. What a lot of people don't realize is that the negative coping skills that we have are there for our survival. They're necessity. I would have been dead had I not picked up alcohol. Had I not drank myself into a stupor, I would have ultimately took my life. But thankfully, because I drank myself dumb enough to pass out, I never actually died. And so finally getting to that point, there's one situation in particular that was my pivoting point that could be a whole nother episode too, because the depth of it, I want to give you the gist of it. But I used to own an organization in Kansas City that I left abruptly, not because I wanted to, but because I had to, because of my own well-being and the burdens that it was creating upon me. So I ultimately had to file suit against my business partner to receive my money back, whatever else. We did not have a good dynamic. It was a really nasty divorce. And I distinctly remember sitting in Colorado, and I was having a conversation with my attorney, and I was hated because my money wasn't coming accurately and on time. And I said to my lawyer, I didn't beat cancer for this guy to be the reason why I kill myself. And when I verbalized that out loud, that was the first time that I said, that makes no sense. What I'm I didn't beat cancer for him to be the reason why I kill myself. That I needed to verbalize that out loud. Now, thankfully, my attorney knows nothing about clinical. Flat out goes, Adam, that's your side of the job, not mine. You know what to do with that, and you know how stupid and ridiculous that sounds. He's a lawyer. He can talk like that. He doesn't have to be soft and therapeutic. And then I was kind of like, I want to be a lawyer because that was the reality I needed. You have got to find that moment of realization about how ridiculous this is, how I am so stuck in this redundant rumination and perseveration that I am not effectively living. I live in Colorado on the side of a mountain. Like that, I literally had to go stand outside, take in my surroundings, and pull myself out of this hole that I was in and that I was allowing myself to be casted into. So that's what I have to implore people to do is look at your life and figure out, are you trying to shave a polar bear? Are you the problem, or is the environment that you are forcing yourself to stay within, is that the problem? Whether it's the job, the relationship, the community. I challenged myself to see if Kansas City was the problem. It's not. I carried the same stuff into Denver, and I even took it to Mexico. I even brought it back. Some of it even came all the way back full circle. So really just understanding those habits and those patterns of survival that we've unintentionally created that we naturally regress back into. Our animal self has to keep us alive. Our brain wants to know why. So you guys don't talk to each other right now. I'm just trying to keep the body alive. Stop asking why. So that's been my life. My journey's not over. That's one of the biggest things. Yes, a lot of people are afraid to start over. This is like the 4th iteration of what my life is. We'll see what iterations 5 and 6 look like. So,
yeah. Adam, I can't thank you enough for being here today and sharing your story with us. Tell everybody how to reach you and work with you and get your book.
The main website is www.askadamconsulting.com. Instagram is my primary social. Instagram, adam.may.motivates. A Fox and a Bear Trap, a book on how to ask for help, is available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. If you have distribution ability, it is also available on Ingram Spark if you have a small boutique or bookstore. And the podcast, which will begin circulating newer episodes in the coming weeks and months, is Defying Despair, a journey into wellness. And other than that, one of my consulting clients is Sheath Underwear. So check out sheathunderwear.com. Man, best underwear. So I always got to throw that one in there too. And then stem cells. I run a stem cell clinic down in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. So renew.healthcare if you're ever interested in learning about stem cells and what we're doing to help with that. So that's everything.
Awesome. Adam, thank you so much for being here, man.
I appreciate it.